Hello again, and welcome to another mini collage video. I have all of these collage papers. Some of them I did for my video coming up on how to print your own collage paper. So I'll just use some I haven't filed yet. So I pulled some nice greens and blacks and maybe with a little bit of blue, some patterns and some plain. So I'm just going to go and use what I can just pull out quickly. So I'm going to start with this sheet, and this was actually a sheet I just used to sort of roller off my roller, and I kind of stamped I think my palette paper on there, which is the big green blotches, and I really liked it, so I decided to keep it and use it as sort of the base piece for these two collages that I'm going to do. And the thing with these two is I decided I want to try to keep these down to as few pieces as possible. So I'm going to try to do both of these. I'm going to do two sets, these two and another two at, further in the video, you'll see the other two. And I think I keep these down to 5 pieces each. I may go back and add a couple of little pieces at the end, just as sort of finishing touches, but mostly they're just 5 pieces. So you'll see I spend a little bit of time playing with them before I glue them down because I want to make sure I've got pieces in the right places. So I pulled in another darker green collage paper, and that was just, again, something I rollered on probably deli paper. So it's fairly solid. And it's a little bit deeper green than what's there. So it adds a little bit of contrast. And I started with a larger piece, and now I'm trying to fit in, other pieces. Again, I'm trying to keep things different sizes and different shapes so that all of the pieces are not the same. Now, the issue with this is because I'm trying to do this with a limited number of pieces, they kind of end up being similar in size, even though I try to make them, a little bit more varied. Some of them do end up very similar, but I think it's okay because I end up tucking some in behind other pieces and some overlap, so you don't necessarily see them in the final collage. So here I'm just trying to set the second one up and get that one started with the base pieces. The white piece with the circles on it that I stamped, and I think that was probably just a lid from something that I stamped some, that's acrylic ink or acrylic paint, just stamped on some white paper to create sort of this circular patterns. And those two pieces and the blue and green piece I knew I wanted. And now I'm just trying to work with these more plain green pieces because both those pieces are patterned, so it can get a little busy. So I wanted to have at least one of the pieces be a little bit less patterny. So this green was kind of a nice accent, I thought. I end up adding the 4th piece here now. So I had this sheet of I have a numbers stencil that I did these stencils, and I believe this is probably in like Payne's gray because it's not really black. It's kind of a deep, deep blue. And I didn't want to use the numbers like the whole numbers. I wanted it to be a little bit obscured. So I basically cut the numbers in half. And I'm just going to use those along the edge. I think they kind of frame in the little collage well, having those on the edge. And now it's just a question of, playing with that green piece to see where that might fit. And I did a second one for the other side. And I want to make sure that I'm putting this, I try to do the pieces in different places. You'll see that the round circular pieces are both in the bottom left. And I think I end up leaving those there because of the way I tore them. I liked the edges. And now I'm just going to go ahead and glue these down. So I just fast forwarded through this. And of course, you start with the bottom pieces and, make sure you have to be clear on where your layers are. I was trying to decide if I wanted to tuck that underneath there, and I decided to just leave it and just make it a little smaller. And I'm just using matte medium for the glue to put this down. You certainly could use gel medium, which is a little bit thicker, and it could be gloss. You could even use glazing medium. I do use that sometimes. The matte medium is nice because it doesn't have a shine, but if you want to shine, you can. Okay, so there I actually sprayed the back of that because paper has a tendency to wrinkle a little bit, the thinner paper, even though that's bond paper. So sometimes if you wet it on the back first and work kind of the glue from the middle out, when it dries, it doesn't have the wrinkles and the little air bubbles underneath it. So now those 3 base pieces are in each collage. I have to figure out for this sort of final bigger plain piece where I want that to go. So I'm just playing a little bit, trying to decide if I want 1 piece or 2 pieces. Maybe trying to think if I wanted to add a little bit more of that blue, light blue in to balance it out somewhere. So now I think I decided I want to go bigger pieces with the green. Rather than 2 smaller pieces, just do some larger pieces and keep them at the top. Because I like the circular patterned piece below, so I don't want to cover that up too much. And that dark green kind of sort of connects into that other green from the blue and green piece a little bit, which visually kind of pulls your eye in. And now I'm trying to decide, do I want to put something in that lower corner? Because the piece I put in with the circles kind of stops before the edge there. So it looks, it just looks a little odd to have the circles just sort of cut off there. So I'm trying to decide if I want to cover that up. And I think, that would be okay. I don't like that big white sort of alleyway that came down from the top there. So I thought, well, what if I move it to the top? And I liked that much better. So I'm going to glue that on so I don't have that big weight sort of vertical gap down the middle. And that's 4 pieces each. And I actually was okay with the way they were, with the exceptions of those bottom right corners. So I'll come back and fix those, you'll see. And then I had this sheet of handwriting or sgraffito, whatever you want to call it. People call it different things, that I wanted to add on top of it later. So now I'm just trying to decide, like, do I want to add some smaller pieces since all these pieces are fairly large? Do I want to introduce this brighter green? I'm just seeing if that would work anywhere. I find it kind of conflicted, so I decided not to use that color at all. I had these patterns, but I decided they were too busy. And I really like these big marks, but I wasn't sure that this really, really black would fit on there. So here's where you see I'm trying to fix those bottom corners just to continue that circular pattern a little bit further over into that corner so that there isn't that big white gap where it just kind of falls off the bottom corner there. I had this little blue piece too that I thought would work down there as well. So I just set it there to kind of live there for a minute while I went back to the other piece. And I had the same problem here where I liked the dots, but they were just too, I think they were just too busy. And here I found a little piece that if I continued that circle there and with the little line that goes up, it kind of connects those circular elements into that dark color where the number paper is. And so it kind of leads your eye back up and around, which was nice. I was trying to see if maybe the numbers would work in the bottom corner there as well, since it still feels like it's a little off, like it needs to be a little heavier, like that corner needs to be closed up a little bit. So I liked this piece that had some color in it, even though it's only a half circle, because I think it gives a little bit of weight to that corner that's so bare. I just had to find the right orientation to put it in there. I wanted to have a little bit of that blue-green show through there just to sort of continue the circle. And have it seem like it was laying on top. So I cut that little white bit off, which I liked much better. So one last attempt to see if I want to add anything else. I think I only end up adding some of these littler dots from the sheet of the circles that I had done. And these little dots I actually made with a cork from a wine bottle. Just, stamp them on over the pattern I already had from the lid when I had made the circles. It just gives a little bit more weight to the bottom there to kind of balance out the darks at the top. And so now I just need to find one to put on the other side. I think I cut out two here that are overlapping just to make it a little bit different. And now I need to find a spot for those. Now these are a little bit harder because there was two, so it had to look like it integrated in somewhere. And I couldn't make it work so much. And then I realized that I hadn't closed up that ring on the other side. It still had kind of just stopped there in that white space. So I pulled the piece that I had originally cut off for the other side, and I just cut out just a tiny little part of that circle and glued it on. Now I don't know if that's considered another piece. I guess then maybe I went over my 5 pieces on that one, so that one may be 6 pieces. But I wanted to close that up so that your eye kind of comes up and travels then into that dark shape that sort of then pulls it up towards the top. And then now I'm back to sort of futzing with this little dot. trying to find a good home for it. And I think I really didn't like it in any place down there. So I think what I end up doing is just taking it off and just leaving that one as is. Yeah, there's the final version. I decided not to put the dot on that one. So for this next set, I decided to use blue instead of green with the black or the darker color. So here's some of the samples that I pulled. And on this one, I really wanted to use some of that writing. I was going to try to use it on both of these, and it didn't really work in the first one, I didn't think. So I didn't really use it, but I definitely want to try to get it in this one. So this blue piece, which again was something I made with a stencil, is going to be the base piece. So it's going to be could be the most, it could be the largest piece, but it's probably going to be the most prominent sort of patterned piece. So I always start with those first. And I generally put them along an edge or in a corner just to give me a start. Now I'm just trying to find some other colors that I like that go with it. So this was an interesting piece. This I had done on mineral paper. And I do have a video that I did on testing out mineral paper. So this was one of the tests that I did with mineral paper. And I believe this had watercolor ink on it, because you'll see when I go over it with the glue that the blue kind of smudges a little bit. So I really liked the edges here, because when I was testing it, I may have either had the paper taped down, or I just sort of had all the ink in the middle. So it left these interesting edges. So I thought I would just use those as an element in the collage, just so it wasn't like a solid edge. And I really like, it's like a turquoise blue ink that I used there. So now I'm looking for some other options. I really liked this paper too. And again, this is in my video when I was talking about painting solid papers. This was one that I did, and it sort of stuck to itself. And so I just let it dry that way. And it had this really cool texture to it. And you certainly can use those in collage as well. I didn't like the dots. I thought they were a little too busy. I had this purple, which was kind of nice too. I kept that there. I wasn't sure. And then I found this piece, and I thought the yellow kind of brightened it up a little bit. So I yanked out a few pieces from this. And again, this looks like it's probably tissue paper that I just did some, I either did some off rollering, like when I was doing other papers, or, cleaned my roller on, or it was, sometimes I do a print of my palette and just put that on tissue paper and keep that as collage paper. So I'm adding that here. So that adds a little bit of yellow. So that kind of brightens it up a bit. You'll see the other side is more kind of white and gray. The middle section here has got a little bit more of the yellow color in it. It also appears a little bit more of a solid, even though it's got multiple colors in it and it has a little bit of texture. When you kind of look at it and squint at it, it looks more like a solid piece than something that has a lot of pattern to it. So again, it was like one of the pieces I wanted to put in to give the eye some place to rest a little bit, because that blue, square pattern is really, really strong and quite prominent. So the one on the right, I think at this point, I have those 3 pieces where I want them. I think I like that as it is. The one on the left, I realized that piece probably doesn't have enough yellow in it, because the other side has some nice bright, kind of that bright yellow green. So I wanted to pull a little bit more of that into this piece as well. So I just yanked off a bigger piece, and now I'm trying to figure out where that might fit. So I'm good with that. So I'm going to glue these down. And so you'll see here, like this, and maybe just because I fiddled with it so much to get it in the right place, you'll see there's some offset that kind of came off there. So now those are glued down. I just sped through that. You didn't need to see me gluing down stuff. And then I have the rest of this piece from the first collage that I had used as the first piece in the earlier part of the video. And so I thought it might be nice to use the rest of that up and make these a little bit more harmonious with the ones that I just did. So they look like, even though they're more green, they could potentially be like a little mini series or set. So now I'm trying to find a spot for those. And I liked it there because it covered up a little bit of that harder edge from that turquoise paper I cut at the top. And now the reason I cut that is because it's mineral paper and you can't tear it. It's a synthetic paper, so you can't actually tear it. So I had to cut it. And I knew I was going to get a hard edge, so I had to figure out ways to kind of soften that edge. So putting the blue the blue square pattern over on the left side, and then adding this last piece on the right side, with a little bit of overlap of that tissue piece in the middle, kind of softened that edge. And you'll see I'm going to do the same thing here. The bottom square piece I put over the bottom of that piece, and this piece I'm going to put over the top of it, at the top left, again to soften up that hard edge a little bit, that really straight sort of turquoisey color. So this one, I like that little green blob that was there, but it didn't work, so I ended up ripping it off. And so now I'm just trying to decide left side, right side, which corner do I want to align it with. And I think I end up, moving it over to the right there. And gluing it down. I really liked that piece, even though it was kind of just a off roller sheet from doing some other papers. Sometimes you get happy accident collage papers. That was one of those that I really, really liked and wanted to use. And so now I'm using this graffito kind of handwriting-esque mark making that I did, and that was done on rice paper. So the paper's a little bit whiter, so it's not going to be quite as transparent. So you'll see what I end up doing is trimming it a little bit tighter to the actual writing. And again, I'll show how I do this in my second video where I talk about mark making and with collage papers and making these kind of collage sheets. But that was actually done with a fine liner applicator bottle with one of those little tiny needle tips. And you just put fluid acrylic in there, or you can put, acrylic with some airbrush medium. And they work really great to make these kind of handwriting-esque marks and other, just line marks that I like to use a lot on the top of, over the stuff. Now, I probably should have done it on deli paper so that it was a little bit more transparent. But I think it ends up being okay here because, again, I'm trying to cover up that harder edge of the turquoise. So having a little bit more opaque to that white, I think ended up being okay. So you'll see it's not perfectly transparent. I mean, against the white, it looks transparent, but on the colors, you can see the edge of the, where I cut it. But I didn't mind it. I think it was okay. I got most of the outer stuff out, cut off, and then I just rollered it down and called it done. And I think each of those was 4 papers and the writing piece. So those really were 5 pieces. And then I thought, well, let's add a little pop of color. So I grabbed that purple that I had and just did some tiny, tiny little pieces to pop on there to see if I liked it. Adding that purple color, I think, was okay. I mean, even though it really sort of stood out, I think they would have been okay there, but I decided to leave them off. Anyway, here's the final.